Another common component of a block, I'm trying to think of a good example for this. Another common component for a block is what we call a tools directory. So tools are in concrete5, they are kind of a catch-all. They're a way to load up concrete5 in some capacity without providing any user interface. So, when you create a page in concrete5, you're selecting a theme that actually loads up a template. There's Chrome attached to that. There's a user interface. Tools are simply scripts that run without any user interface, but they still run within concrete5, and they still have access to all the concrete5 libraries. They have connection to a database, etc. And there are sort of global tools, which we use all the time in concrete5, primarily for pop-up windows and things like that, where we want to frame the content without providing a lot of interface. We want to frame the content within a page. But blocks can also have their own tools for primarily for Ajax style stuff. So, for example, when I add the AutoNav block to a page, I can set all these different options, and then I can click preview, and it shows the contents. It shows what my nav, what pages my nav is going to show, based on what I have chosen. Well, this is an Ajax. What this actually does is it takes the current form that you have set up, and it takes that form and it submits that to a separate script through Ajax and gets the response and displays it within the page. And that is done through a tool. So if I go into tools to preview to tools, you can see I have something called preview_pane. And if I look in here, this is just a simple instantiation of the block type, and it takes all of the different parameters posted to it, and then it renders the block. And that's a little bit more advanced than what we're going to do. But the point is that it's a simple script that runs without any kind of Chrome, and then it's actually shown within the user interface over here. So we talk a bit more about how to use tools and why you might want to in advanced block development. But it's an interesting. When you see that tools directory, that's what it's for. And finally, before I start to take some more questions, we're going to go through the last sort of common thing you might find in a blocks directory, and that's the templates directory. Now, some of you guys might be familiar with custom templates because of from editing with concrete5. So that's what this option is down here. So custom template is a way of applying a separate view file to a block. So if I actually look at my HTML block, view.php is my view layer, and this is what shows up within a particular page, and it's very, very simple. Echo content. That's all it does. Content is available within the scope of the block, and that view layer, the common view layer, is view.php. So all HTML blocks, when they are added to a page, use this template. However, same goes for AutoNav. However, I can provide alternate templates if I want to use the same block the same underlying block architecture and data to display different displayed differently, perhaps different CSS, perhaps using additional parameters, etc. And you can use those through custom templates. Here you can see a list of all the custom templates that are available for the AutoNav block. They're just files in the templates directory, breadcrumb.php and header menu.php. And these are typically people will take view.php, and they'll copy them into the templates directory, and then they will make their changes. And then when we apply the different custom templates, that's they will use that file instead of view.php. And you can see I just did that and it changed it. And at this point, I think I will take any questions before going into how we install our own block types, and showing you an example of a block type that I built for a client site, a couple years ago, and how that block works, and walking through, how it, probably seeing another block besides HTML will sort of help, help people understand how those blocks might work. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat. If not, I will head on fairly soon. All right. Well, it doesn't look like they're. Oh, here we go. Tom asks, can it automatically include a CSS and JS file for a block, or is that more of an advanced thing? No, that's a good question. That's a great question. Yes, it can, and this is something that a few of our blocks in the core do. And let me try and recall exactly which ones. So the page list is a good example of this. Yes, you can automatically include different CSS files and JavaScripts for blocks in the view mode. So, for example, if I add page list to my actually no, I'm gonna add a survey. I think is the wait no, it's not that. It's guestbook. There we go. We're gonna add ourselves a guestbook block, and this is just kind of blog comment style stuff, and you can see that puts this block into the page. If I publish this page and look at the source, you can see toward the top of the source I'm actually calling in a file, and this is actually in the header of the page, not in the body of the page itself. I'm including something called concrete/blocks/guestbook/view.css, and if I follow that, you can see this is guestbook specific CSS stuff. And the cool part about this is if I go into my guestbook folder, this is a block. I have view.css here. Any file in your folder for a block that is called view.css or view.js will automatically be included in the block, and will automatically be included in that block. And furthermore, I'm trying to find an example of something else that works this way too. If I add in an instance of the date nav, the date navigation block, which is, and it's a block that requires both some custom CSS and some custom JavaScript, because it's doing this animated stuff. If I refresh this page and view the source, you can see I am including blocks/datenav CSS date_nav.css and date_nav JS date_nav.js. That's because not only will view.css and view.js be included automatically when you if they exist within a block, any and all CSS that are present within a CSS and JS directory, all those files will be included automatically here. And so that's kind of nice, because it lets you add files that don't necessarily, view.css and view.js are nice because they will get swapped out if you use a different custom template. because they're really dependent on the fact that you're using view.php. But if you want to actually use, the date nav relies on this stuff for all of its instances. It always needs this JavaScript. Any files you add to CSS and JS will also be included, and so you don't have to change their name. Tom asks, could you add templates/breadcrumb.css and templates breadcrumb.js? You can. It works a little differently than that, but you can. What you do in that situation, so what he's asking is there a way to provide CSS custom template specific CSS or JavaScript? And yes, there is. You don't do it quite that way, but it does work similar to that. So what you would do, let's say we wanted a special custom template for the AutoNav that we wanted to call bold, and this template is very, very bold, and it's we could do this by simply changing the custom template, but we'll show this off for sake of example. What we could do is create something called bold.php, but I think what I will do instead is you can create a folder called bold and name this view.php and put it inside there. And then if you create a CSS file called view.css in here, and you added this to that CSS, now if you apply your custom template here, you can see the bold shows up the same, and then when you save it, you can see if I publish it, all of a sudden every piece of text in my page is bold because I've got this greedy style sheet that is now being loaded. But the point of this is that yes, you can do what you're asking. You can create custom templates that are actually directories instead of files, and this will work with view.js as well. So cut your view layer and your custom templates are pretty. There's a lot of flexibility in there with what CSS and JavaScript you can include. Spence asks a question about JavaScript. CCM validate block form is previously declared. It is actually declared in blank in UI.js because it's actually looked for. When you submit the form. The refresh link type controls function is not previously declared. It is its own custom beast that is just added without var. All right, so what I'm going to do now is go through the process of adding a block. So adding a block type, I should say. So what we're going to use for this is we're going to use a custom block type that I created for a site in the past, and this is sort of the most common use case that we encounter with custom block types, which is you're working on a client's site or your own site, and you decide that you're reusing functionality that needs to look or function in a certain way, and you don't want to repurpose the HTML block anymore, and you don't want to use custom templates. You really need your own custom block type for that stuff. And for this website, we built a contact information block. So this was for a college, and the college had every different department had a bunch of faculty pages and with information about the people involved, And for each one of those pages, they had the same bit of content in the right sidebar. They had a photo, they had email addresses, they had a physical address, phone numbers, office hours, that kind of stuff. So rather than, and they all look nice, they looked a certain way. So rather than giving them custom HTML that they should use with HTML blocker, or try and get TinyMCE, our content editor, to work right with that stuff, we decided it would be smartest to create a custom block type so that they could just enter the data and it would take care of adding in all the CSS that was necessary. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is a little refresher on concrete5's override system. So in concrete5, all of our blocks are found in the concrete directory. When you're building your own block types, you don't want to put your blocks in there. They won't even show up as available in there. What you want to do is you want to create your block in the empty blocks directory that is found in the root. And you can see I've added something in here called contact_information. It's got an icon.png, it's got a controller, which defines some of the stuff that we talked about before. And I've created that, and I want to install it in our system. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Dashboard and find block types. This is where custom block types that you are installing will wait for you. So you can see all of the currently installed block types down here, but up here we have our sidebar contact information block, and this is awaiting installation. So we're going to take a quick little gander at dbxml. You can see I've got some of these columns defined here for the columns that I want to store with this block. And when I click install, it says block type installed. If I look in here, show tables, you can see that my database table has been installed, and now my block shows up as currently installed. And if I click on it, I can see usage count 0. Here's where I can remove it. Refreshing it will go through dbxml and reparse that XML and alter the database table to match that new syntax if I need to do that. So that's all you have to do to add a block type to concrete5. And now let's take a look at how it looks. When I click add block, now my sidebar contact information block shows up at the bottom of my list. And when I click on this, I get some pretty self-explanatory fields. I can choose an image. This hooks into our file manager. We'll talk more about how to do that in the advanced block development course. But here's some basic form fields, including physical locations, email addresses, phone numbers, fax numbers. We don't actually have the name for this because the name for the person here, because the way that the site was structured, the name appeared in the left hand in the main content area along with the bio, and then the contact information was really some sort of auxiliary information about how best to contact this person. So if I look in add.php, you can see that there's nothing here. Instead, what we're doing is including form.php. That should be fairly self-explanatory. Same with edit. But when I go into form.php, this is some pretty basic stuff. This takes care of working with the concrete5 file manager, and we can talk more about that in the advanced level course. But down here we've got our 4 fields, and these are using the concrete5 form helper. The form helper is automatically available within the add and edit and different scopes in when editing or when working with concrete5 blocks. This is documented on our own site. This is not required. It's just basically a simple way. It's a sort of a helper function for working with common HTML forms. So you don't have to write all of the HTML code for defining form elements yourself. And moving right along. So once I click this to add it, you can see that my block shows up this way. That's just this view.php right here. So this block starts with div with the class sidebar contact information. They all have the contact information with h3 above it, so that's not something that's editable through the block. And then we test to see if all of the fields have been added, and if they have been, we just output them through. We just output them in the page, and so you can see that email, address, phone, fax, those are all automatically available within this template. The controller.php for this block is super, super simple. There's a name, a description, the database table, which is probably the most important part. There's how big to make the interface, and then some caching options, which you can leave out of your blocks. This is something that you should really only include if you totally understand how your block works, how it's going to be used, and what these options mean. And we talk more about this in the advanced section. But as you can see, there's no add function, there's no edit, there's no save. This is the bare minimum that you need for a block in concrete5 that will be functional and that will be that will be useful. So I just deleted the email address, and no problem there. And this is just kind of a super basic block that I think is a good example of just how easy it is to make a block and kind of how useful it is, because you wouldn't want to give editors all the ability to potentially, if you just told someone that they should add HTML to the right-hand side of a page for all of the different faculty members, you'd probably get a site that worked, but you'd have a lot of interface inconsistency. And the site that we were doing this for was a pretty nicely designed site, and we didn't want editors to have to worry about making sure that they applied the right classes at the right time. A few more little things before I open it up to questions again. There are a couple more functions that can be shown, that can be added to different controllers when blocks are used. If you find yourself creating a block that uses multiple database tables, for example, which we go through a bit more in the advanced section, you can define delete in your block, and this function automatically runs when you delete an instance of the block, and or I should say, this automatically runs when a block is no longer deemed necessary and is removed from the system. So, for example, let's say I delete this. Let me make sure that I've got this correct. I'm gonna exit edit mode. Whoops. changes here. Okay. So for example, if I click delete here, you might think that the delete function has run behind the scenes in the contact information table. So if you don't define your own, delete function, it automatically simply just removes the one line that matches it from the BT table, from the table variable in your controller. However, if we look in our actual database, you can see that a couple different copies of this block are still in there, and that's because concrete5 keeps them around because there are different versions of your page. So if I click on this one, you can see that that contact information block is still there, and it's on both versions of the page. So in reality, the delete function for a block only runs when when there are no more instances of that block around in different versions of the page. So if I take these two versions and I remove them, and then I refresh this page, you can see that they are actually gone from the database because I have removed those versions of the page, in concrete5. The block is no longer referenced anywhere in the site, so the delete function runs. Again, you don't have to define this in your site, but if you're working with, it automatically removes the one database table row that it works with. But if you find yourself storing data in multiple tables for a block, you might want to, or you're working with files or doing any sort of custom stuff that's cluttering up your file system or doing any number of things, it might be useful to create your own delete function. Similarly, we can talk more about why this might matter in the advanced section. But anytime your block is edited from an active version of the page, we actually create a new copy of it and then save the changes in the new copy. That way, we can roll back to the previous copy of the page, the previous copy of the block. So all blocks behind the scenes have a duplicate function. If you're creating a custom block with multiple tables, you'd need a duplicate function in your controller that knows how to take a block and duplicate it. Again, this is a little bit outside the scope of what we're talking about today, but just thought I would preempt some of those questions and perhaps give you guys something to delve into a little bit more, a little bit deeper than what we've talked about so far.